Welcome to Make Your Money Matter with Brad Barrett, the show that aims to change the way you think about wealth management. Brad is a certified financial advisor, established radio host, and author of Retire Right. He is a managing director and partner at One Capital Management, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm managing over $4 billion for clients across the nation. Brad and his team are dedicated to helping clients protect and preserve their assets so they can reach their investment and retirement goals. And now, your host of Make Your Money Matter, Brad Barrett.
Welcome to Make Your Money Matter. I'm your host, Brad Barrett. I'm also a managing director and partner here at One Capital Management, and I'm here each and every week to educate and inform on all things financial because, after all, your money matters. And I want to pick up a little bit on our conversation we had last week. We talked about the weight of money, so be sure to go check that episode out. And it's a good episode. We had a lot of really good feedback from it, in fact, too, which is why I'm going to dive deeper into the subject about currency. But if you remember, the actual weight of money, whether it's a $1 bill, a $5 bill, $100 bill, it doesn't matter. The actual weight is 1 gram. And what I was bringing up last week was making the bridge between something that weighs so little, yet in reality, it's something that weighs so heavy on our hearts and all of us and our minds, everything about us. So I love sharing that because I think a lot of times our psychology, especially when it comes to things as important as money, we have to realize that our neighbors, our friends, our community around us are dealing with the same kind of stuff that we are, maybe in different forms and for different reasons, but they are dealing with it, which is why you maybe have heard the term, you might have heard this term before, cash is king. So today, we're going to be going into holding cash, tax planning, because we're obviously officially in tax season, and more. But before we do, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single episode. All right, let's get into it. So I want to use this episode to launch into that tax planning conversation. We're going to go through a couple different tax strategies or things to bring up and to talk with your tax preparer. But I want to discuss money as it relates to cash for a second, because it's been something I've been talking to clients about a lot. And again, as last week I mentioned, it hits our minds as well as our hearts as an interesting notion. And I've been doing this long enough to say this. The majority of my career, we've been at low interest rates. And I've also been sharing frequently in the past probably 18 months or so that over the past, let's say 15 years, all of us really, since the Great Recession, since 08, 09, we've been somewhat spoiled. It's okay to say this, okay? We've had a very low interest rate environment. We've had a very high and robust stock market over that time period, as well as with real estate. And, I've been kind of sharing with clients and on our radio programs and different podcasts that I'm calling it the hangover from 2008. And there are many similarities to 2022 and what we're dealing with here already in the first couple months of 2023. But I want to talk about that cash piece, because what I want to share with everyone listening and watching right now is if you have cash right now, the one positive side of a rising interest rate environment, which we've been seeing all through last year, is actually getting paid for your cash now. So for those of you still sitting in checking and savings accounts, getting paid less, let's say, than 0.5%, now's this time to start looking at money markets, maybe even CDs, and if you don't mind a lockup there. But we're going to talk about the basis of why, because I can come at you with a bunch of numerical data as to why, but our brains filter it differently. If I were to say to you, hey, if you had $100,000 sitting in cash right now and you have $15,000 of credit cards, you know how many times I've noticed that people won't use the cash to pay off the credit card? And it's ironic because in the cash account, you're making like maybe 0.5% if you're lucky. And on the credit card, you might be paying 10%. So you're literally okay with a 9.5% on what I'll call a rental charge, because we don't want to get rid of the cash. Because the cash to us, as we all have been in our upbringing, right, is security. But the smart money way to think about it is you want to make sure that you're not costing yourself what we in our business call arbitrage or phantom money. And I want to attack the why about that. The why you'd want to look at cash relative to interest rates and things that are out there right now that you can look at. So I need to state this loud and clear when I talk about looking at places to park cash. What I'm talking about specifically around cash is not necessarily your emergency funds. And that a rule of thumb, as I've shared on the show many times, is typically between 3 and 6 months of overhead. Now, if you're not in that camp for a second, don't go getting down on yourself, okay? There's a lot of things going on in that statement that I go through with clients one-on-one. There's a lot of houses being bought, reallocation of cash. This is a present time period conversation when it comes to how you're looking at your monies. But let me be very clear about something. Money does not exactly equal currency. And when I shared that last week in terms of the weight of money and how that is perceived sometimes in our world, money is intangible. It's an intangible store of value, right? That's all it is. For example, think gold, silver, platinum, rice, salt, things like that, commodities. Currency, on the other hand, is a tangible form of money. So instead of trading silver for salt, you can buy salt with currency. Isn't that right? So here's why that's important and why I'm bringing this up. Before 1971, the banks could only print as much currency as they had gold. If they wanted to print more currency, they had to sell a percentage of their gold. But for many of you historians out there, like myself, what happened? The US dollar had been removed from what we had called, at that time, the gold standard in 1971. And since then, currency has been backed by, let's be frank, not a whole lot. Theoretically, money itself is somewhat worthless. It's not backed by what we would consider anything like it was in 1971, which was backed by gold. It was backed by the currency of gold. Now today, we all know this, and there's a lot of different political sides to this, but it's not really about that. It's just a kind of a matter of fact discussion point today. Banks can print as much currency as they want. I mean, that's the first thing I want to get across. And it's not necessarily a draconian statement here. It's just kind of factual, right? I mean, now the second thing I want to bring up is I want you to understand currency in the form of paper and coins, what, maybe your grandfather, your parents called greenbacks, Again, this is dovetailing off of last week's discussion and discussion around money and the weight of money. Cash and coins right now, for the most part, if you look at different stats, makes up around 3% of the world's money. I want to state that for a second. 3% is made up of coins and cash and greenbacks. The other 97% is basically debt. Let me give you an example. Many of us have likely bought a house before. Imagine if you were to buy a house and take out a $500,000 mortgage. Theoretically, if you think about it, that $500,000 didn't exist before they simply created it by typing a few numbers on a screen. Now, I'm obviously being a little loose on this, but hear me out. It didn't exist before. They created it by typing in some numbers. So when anyone gets a loan, you get money that has been created theoretically out of thin air. Now, why is that important to know, other than it being maybe an aha moment for some of you? When the government needs money, where do they go? They go to the central bank and ask for a loan. The central bank gives them money created out of, you can call it this way, but thin air, in exchange for what? Government bonds. So this is newly created money, floods the system, and essentially devalues the existing money. By the way, I economically just described to you in its basic form, inflation. New money, flooding the system, devaluing current or existing money. It's what we have seen over this past year. Now, why am I telling you all this as it relates to cash and ultimately the tax preparation? For anyone right now who is sitting on cash that, again, is above or beyond your emergency funds, I'm going to be totally frank, you're getting wrecked. Those that are maybe on the side or of not wanting the market volatility and are being fearful, I understand that. And I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I'm just being candid with you here. And you're going to go out there in the world and get basically nothing for your cash while inflation is running at 6 and 7. You're getting wrecked. You have to go into an environment where you're making money with your cash. I mean, if you're making less than 1% with inflation, first of all, inflation over the past 30 years has roughly been about 2.5% to 3%. And currently, as I mentioned before, running around 6 to 7. Now it's going to be somewhat short-lived. We're already seeing it go down a little bit, but think about it this way. And many of us have seen the reports on cost of living adjustments and wage increases. And if you have a historical inflation number around, let's call it 3%, and you are in cash making less than 1%, you're losing money. You're losing about 2%. Inflation's running at 3%. Basically, everything else around you is going up by 3%, and you're making 1% on cash, you're losing 2%. And the irony I'm trying to get at here is, I'm not trying to say this is, again, right or wrong. You can do what you want to do. My point is this: we tend to be more conservative on things that actually make more monetary sense and more aggressive on things that make less monetary sense. I mean, this is subconscious. This is behavioral. Maybe from your upbringing, maybe it's generational. I've noticed it a lot in generational aspects. Remember, we're only one generation away from the Great Depression era. So many of us, many of you watching or listening, this is one of those conversations where we have, we were raised by parents or grandparents who have gone through things like that, where the Great Depression, before credit cards, before retirement plans, right? I mean, just forget the Great Depression for a second. Just think about an era where you didn't have credit. The mid 50s and 60s, we had layaways, Sears catalog, things like that. We didn't have retirement plans even until the 70s. So this is all somewhat new. And there is some generational aspect to this also with behavioral and mark of the times, depending on, different viewpoints. So I want to be very clear about something when I share this, that it's not a knock to anyone out there, myself included, who do these kind of things. I check myself sometimes and I'm like, why do I feel like I'm more safe if I park cash, even though I know logically that I can go and make more than that over the same time period to which I would have held the cash in the lower interest-bearing account. So while you're working hard to save your money, for those of you who have cash, you've done something, right? You've either maybe borrowed it from an asset that's making more, or you still have, if you sold that asset, you cover your debt plus some, or you saved up that for a certain goal, or just have what I call dry powder account. So what can you do with the cash?
Stay connected. Get frequent updates on the show. Follow Brad Barrett and Make Your Money Matter on most social media platforms. And catch full episodes of Make Your Money Matter streaming now on our YouTube channel. To schedule your no-obligation appointment, go to onecapital.com or call 805-410-5454.
Here's what I want to share. I want to bring what I saw the smart money world, the people that you and I would look and say, man, that guy knows how to make money, earn money, grow money, ultimately protect money. That's the business here at One Capital we are in for our clients. I want to bring those smart money ideas and theologies to all of us. So first and foremost, let's play the game of the banks. That's kind of when it comes to cash right now, play the game of the banks. I mean, we can't print money, right? But banks also invest assets and make their money work for them. I love the statement there. It's like, don't hate the player, hate the game, right? We got to be in the game to play. So just to be clear, when I talk about investing in this cash conversation, we can do it pragmatically and logically and very efficiently, but we also need to do it with a fundamental understanding as to why. Why are we doing it? I mean, you can do the same thing. So I want to introduce a word that many of my clients have heard me say, and the word is arbitrage. I just mentioned before. It's the difference, the delta, and we have to start thinking about that sometimes. And for any of you right now, if you have debt, maybe not on a 0% credit card, or you're pushing it down the road kind of thing, but just debt or credit cards, and we have cash, think about that first. I get the question all the time, should I pay off my debt first or invest cash? Odds are, and I don't know your personal situation, but odds are if the debt is double digits, I would say pay the debt down first. It's a headwind. It's like if you're a golfer, you're gonna bring a bigger club out to hit into the wind, right? So instead of hitting a bigger club, why don't you curtail the wind and bring the right club out? Same thing with investing, okay? And one thing that kind of gets some eyebrows being raised is if you go and pay something off today that is charging you, let's say 10% on a Visa or MasterCard or something like that, you earned yourself 10%. Let me just pause for a second. If you pay something that you were paying 10% on, our brains don't think about it this way. You definitely weren't marketed to this way over the course of your maybe adult life and investing, or even like your upbringing with parents, but you earned that 10%. Dare I say, you guaranteed yourself a 10% comeback, right? Because you were paying 10, you paid it off, now it's gone. I mean, there's not a whole lot of guarantees in the world, but that's pretty much what it is. I mean, you don't hear, and many people say that because, again, our brains don't think that way. But again, if you go and pay that off, you pay the 10%, you just made 10%. It's inverse investing, if you will, right? It's inverse in the way that you're not paying it over the next year, but you made it, you saved it, you saved yourself that percentage. So the idea with this is to think about currency and money, cash in particular, but it's really more around looking at, let's say, things like money markets. So keep it liquid. You don't want to give up the liquidity. And right now, there's a lot of money markets out there. This is a timestamp piece here that are yielding 2, 3, even almost to 4% right now. That's liquid. So take a look for those. Talk to your advisor. And for those of you who don't know about that kind of stuff, look at the credit unions, maybe your local one. The CD rates are really good as well. Now you have to lock some things up with CDs. I'm not a huge fan of that with my clients, but I understand the situation. That's why I like money markets. They're basically yielding somewhat of the same, and they're liquid. We've been using those for our clients for short-term objectives. And I have a couple clients, like right now, as an example, saving for a wedding. A couple clients sold a house or they took a line on a house early on at lower rates, and they're just waiting for the real estate market to change. So we have this shorter time period to park some cash. We don't know for how long, but we don't want to take on volatility of the market. So we use rates right now to take advantage of that. So talk with your advisor you're working with, the credit union, maybe a local bank, whoever you might be. Make sure the ethos I want to bring here on this is making sure that your cash is doing something for you, because unlike the past 15 years or so, cash can actually pay you right now. And I want to reiterate something that's important. if you're looking at debt or other things, be careful what you tell yourself that you're okay parking something over here while you sit on cash. Take a look at that. It's an interesting way to look at it. And if you have things out there that are paying debt, but you have the cash to pay it before you talk about money markets or other things, look at paying it off. I think it's wise. Now, again, not knowing your personal situation, you're going to want to talk with that with an advisor, but it might be something that you want to look at with really open arms and maybe trying something new. Think about it. When's the first time you started driving and everything was scary? I mean, now look at you. You're going 85 miles an hour, putting hot sauce on your taco, right? Driving with your knees. I mean, we all got to drive, try something new at times. And I think maybe I like to share on the show is thinking new. And so I think if you do it wisely with wise counsel, it is a wise thing to do. So anything I say with regards to cash, make sure it all encompasses your overall wealth plan. Something we do here at One Capital. But I think more than anything with the rise in rates where they are, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the fact that now's the time to look and think logically about, hey, look, if rates are rising and my debt is becoming more expensive, can I potentially get more bang for my buck on cash or future cash I might have while the banks are raising rates? The answer is yes. So I want to make sure everyone out there who watches and listens to the show really sees value in that and goes and looks for it. And again, we can help you with that. If you're a client, we've likely talked about it. If not, now's a great time to bring it up and see where things are at and go through the conversations as it surrounds your cash and ultimately your overall wealth management plan. Okay, it's time to answer your questions. If you have a question or topic you'd like me to address, you can leave a comment or a question in the comment section. Or if something a little bit more personal, you can go to the About page on this channel and you can send us an email. As always, we'll keep the questions I read here anonymous, so you never have to worry about your name being shared, but we would love to hear from you. So the question that came in today was about cash and really time periods. Now, you've heard me say the bucket planning before, where it's kind of short-term, mid-term, long-term. The question was, what do you define as short-term? This is a subjective answer, so I'm going to give you my opinion of nearly 2 decades being an advisor. To me, anything less than 2 years is considered short-term. So basically, you want to backstop it by how much you have in your reserves for the situations. That's at 3 to 6 months. And anything on top of that you would likely be using for something. I mentioned some comments earlier. I have a client saving for some weddings. I have a parent saving for weddings for their kids. I have a couple clients, in fact, that have taken lines or have cash that are waiting to buy a second property or a rental property. They just don't know when it's going to happen, but it could happen in the next 2 years. Great examples of short-term, not wanting market volatility, but now's a good time to say, hey, while we're sitting in cash, let's go get paid some, because now you can. That's the benefit of rise of interest rates. I think if it's over 2 years, that's when you start having the conversation with an advisor around, do I want to be looking at this a little bit longer term with some equity structures, with some fixed income bonds, things like that, as well as some cash pieces that, again, they're yielding great stuff right now. I think that's almost overlooked in the media right now when it comes to, cash. I mean, we talk about rates and it's talking about debt rates, but hey, what about CDs? What about money markets? Those are good finally. We haven't been paid on that in forever. So something to look at there. Great question in terms of time period. I define it as short term, less than 2 years. I really kind of define the midterm as between like 2 years and 25 years. And then obviously anything past that is considered long term. That's where your 401k assets, your 403bs, deferred comp plans, IRAs, things like that. Again, if you have a question or comment you'd like me to read here, leave it in the comments section, or again, you can email us in the About page on our channel. But before we go, if you found anything helpful today and you want to learn more, you can visit our website at onecapital.com. You can also call or text us. We want to help. Listen, there's no pressure. We don't treat people like a number. We value our relationships. It's the lifeblood of what we do here at One Capital. So click, call, or text us today. If you're not following us on social media, you should be. You can follow us at Make Your Money Matter. We're sharing great information on all of our social media platforms. As I often say, if you enjoy the show, share it with someone you like. And if you don't like it, I guess, share it with someone you don't like. But until next time, always remember, make your money matter.
The information in this show is educational and general in nature and does not take into consideration a listener's personal circumstances. Therefore, it is not intended to be a substitute for specific individualized financial, legal, or tax advice. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a final decision.